but you do not need to know which one, okay? Not too much a problem MRI-wise that we're gonna look over there. On the other hand, those muscles are tiny little bit, and normally the muscles of our body are enclosed by fascia. Fascia is like the sheath, like the sore sheath, exactly. And that fascia, it's thick enough in upper and lower extremity muscles, which is will reflect a little bit right on the image, and we can determine each muscle's name based on the separation by those fascia. Now, in your filet mignon ones, there is no fascia, or there is a tiny fascia that you cannot separate. So the muscles are intermingled. It's still too far from me, man. I said here, next week. So anyway, we're just going to review them just to get yourself a little bit familiarity. Your assignment is not going to include any of those muscles. Your question on your quiz next week will not include any of those muscles. So the muscles of the spine, of course, those are right and left. I'm talking about the right and left, extending the length of the spine. Those muscles are divided based on how deep and how superficial, okay? So immediately underneath of your skin and the fat, always underneath of the skin we have what? Fat. Don't be scared of that word, okay? Because can you survive with no fat? All right, so fat is very important. Okay. Underneath of the skin and the fat, you have the first layer, which is the most superficial layer of the spine division muscles. The first one we call it splenus capitis, and the second one we call it what? Splenus cervicis. Now, word capitis pertain to what? Head, okay? And word cervicis pertain to what? So I have two bands of the spine that extend from the vertebra to the head, and from the vertebra to the vertebra. So this way and that way on both sides. Look at the pictures to understand, okay? If ever you're gonna read those muscles, none of those further you need to. You just need to know the names if you ever want to, okay? As I said, I'm not gonna ask you. So this is splenus cervicis, and this is splenus capitis. From the spine to the head, splenus capitis. From the spine to the spine is splenus cervicis. And this is the most superficial one. Next layer is intermediate. That means it is not too superficial, it is not what? Too deep. It is in between. In between mean intermediate one. And they refer to it by erector spinal muscles, meaning all those we have self action, which is direction of that spine. In this, you have group. The first one, iliocostalis, from the name. Ilio pertain to iliac bone. Costalis pertain to ribs. No brainer. Okay? Then they're gonna start from the iliac bone and from my ribs. They're gonna start from my iliac bone and from my ribs. Where do they end? If they end on my cervical spine, then I'm gonna call it iliocostalis cervicis. If they end in my thoracic spine, vertebra, then we're gonna call it iliocostalis thoracic. And if they end in my lumbar vertebra, we're gonna call them what? Iliocostalis lumbaris, meaning iliocostalis cervicis, iliocostalis thoracic, iliocostalis lumbaris. Make sense? Sometimes. The next group is longissimus. Longissimus also based on their location. Longissimus capitis, that's mean all the way to the head. Longissimus cervicis, to my cervical spine. Longissimus thoracic, to my thoracic vertebra. The next group, which is the spinalis group, is the same. Spinalis capitis, spinalis cervicis, spinalis thoracic, blah, 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 blah. Go to this picture, and what I mumbled, it is easy for you to understand. Now, what you need to remember is, remember them either outer to inner or what? Inner to outer, in sequences. And of course, they are same right and left. Everything in your body, same right and left, guys. Okay? There's some exception to the rule, yes. But 99.99% of our body, whatever you have on the right, you have on the left. So if I start from outside toward the inside, I will see the first group, which is the iliocostalis. If I'm looking at the iliocostalis at the level of the lumbar, iliocostalis lumbaris, iliocostalis thoracic, iliocostalis cervicis. Got it? Move further toward the inside, you are going to see the next group, which is the longismus. Longismus lumbaris, longismus thoracic, longismus capitis. Go further, more toward inside, you're going to see what? Spinalis. And it is the same. You see? So you are naming what? In group. From outer to what? To inner. The most outer is what? The iliocostalis. Further inside, longismus. And further, more toward the inside, midline is spinalis. And then lumbaris, thoracic, cervicis, and if it extends toward the head, we call it capitis. Make sense? Also sometimes. The deepest layer, which is way further, okay? And those are, first group, transverse spinalis. You have semispinalis capitis, semispinalis cervicis, and semispinalis thoracic. And then you have another one, which is multifidus and the rotators. So those are what? More deeper. So you're not going to see any of those because they are too deep unless you remove what? All those. So they are underneath of this group, correct? Looking at the picture, there you go. The semispinalis and the rotators, and then at the level of the lumbar, you call them multifidus. Any question? Rotator are the most deep, and you can tell that they extend between the transverse processes and the spinal processes. Rotator, by the way, this is we use them not only to turn like this and this way. So turning, if you want to crack your back like this and like this. You like it, huh? Oh, I know. Mm-hmm. An axial cut at the level of the thoracic vertebra. Why thoracic? Because I'm seeing ribs. Do you have ribs anywhere other than your thoracic region? Then, if I see ribs, that means this is my thoracic region. So, moving from out toward in, or you can use in and out, like the burger. Iliocostalis, longismus, semispinalis, multifidus, and rotator. And the most superficial are the spinalis, that's the first group. This is the second, and this is the third. None of the above you could see. I could show you some picture, you guys, you can tell how hard they are. This is why I am not going to ask you. I don't want any one of you to have a hard time. Don't waste too much time, okay? There, that's the picture. So basically, you can consider this is the map for this one. And you can name them based on the group. We said the one underneath of your skin and the muscles, those are what? The spinalis. Now you need to understand, do we have on the top over here muscles? The answer is yes, but those, they don't belong to your spinal region. So we are discussing only what? The spinal region muscles. So I do have muscles. Do you guys know what's the name of the muscles The one immediately underneath of the skin and the fat in this area. Trapezius. How about the one on the bottom? If you go to latissimus dorsi, okay, do you go to the gym? You do? Do you do this? You sit down and you do, okay, that's the latissimus dorsi. You get that? Okay. So those are the same, as I said, you can review them. You do not need to worry too much, ladies and gentlemen. Papa love you a lot, believe me. I'm not gonna make him hard on you. Okay? Another image, but this is at the level of what? Of the cervical. Okay? Just look at it. Same, oh my God, that's a lot. Same cervical. This is in coronal. You see, you cannot determine which one is which one because there is no fascia. When we guys gonna get to the upper and lower extremity, every muscles you can separate it from the other one, nice and beautiful. Believe me. Then, at that point, you need to know them. The answer yes, you will. So save your energy for muscles until we get to the upper and lower extremity. This will be on your what? Second half of this semester. But first, you need to make the first half through. If you don't make it, you're not gonna get the chance to see those nice, beautiful muscles. Correct? Oh. Bypass. Those muscles, we're gonna talk about them 4 more times, by the way. Okay? Because those are part of the pelvis. When we're gonna get to the pelvic region, are part of the abdominal region, and also part of what? Of your spinal region. Okay? Thanks God, there are only 2 muscles. The first one, we call it iliopsoas, or psoas. If you look at the lumbar vertebra, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them, you are having what? A muscles that originated from those vertebra, meaning from the lumbar vertebra, I'm gonna have what? Those muscles originated or attached to this. And then they're gonna go where? The muscles is gonna go what? Down. This is the iliac fossa. I have another muscles over here. We call it what? Iliacus. The iliacus muscles fiber and the iliopsoas and the psoas fiber are going to emerge as one single muscle. At that point, you're gonna call it iliopsoas muscles. Where does that iliopsoas muscles end? In the lesser trochanter of your femur. So, psoas muscles start from here, iliacus from here, both they emerge, they end where? In my lesser trochanter of my femur. This muscle is the one we use it to flex what? What's the articulation? The hip one. Oh. The next muscles, which is next door, just go a little bit toward right and lower, meaning exactly my 2 hands, from the bottom ribs, the last ribs, to the iliac crest. And this is quadratus lumbarium. Question? No? Good. So this is what you are seeing. The psoas, the iliacus, and both are emerging further down. So when we're gonna talk about the lower extremity, we're gonna mention Mr. iliopsoas, because it's acting on my shoulder. When we're gonna talk about the abdominal hip, sorry. after lunch, shoulder and hip are the same. Okay? When we're gonna talk about the abdominal cavity, those 2 muscles, basically the quadratus lumbarium and the iliopsoas, they do, or they create the posterior aspect of your abdominal cavity wall. So we're gonna talk about them one more time. You can remember them for today, if you wish. Nothing is coronal cut, which is, if you are able to locate the spine in the middle, that's me. Next to it is what? Is the iliocostalis lumbaris. You go further, the quadratus. And you go further is the psoas. There is no psoas. There more. Iliocostalis lumbaris. It's supposed to be, oh my God. Let me see. Next. Yeah, that's better. Yeah, then there. So the supposed to be between those two is the psoas muscles. They didn't point on it, but supposed to be in between two. On axial cut, you will see a good. This is the spine, lumbar vertebra, body, the bone. And we say the psoas muscles basically attached to it. So right and left, it's obvious. You go further toward lateral, right and left, you're gonna see what? The quadratus lumbarum. So the iliopsoas, the psoas muscles is over here, and then toward more the side is what? The quadratus. Okay? And then if you go around the spine process, you are going to see the from outside to the inside, the iliocostalis, the longissimus, and the transverse spinalis. Question? No? That's all what you need to know for the muscles. Just look at it, read the name, and remember those are the filet mignon. The next part for today's lecture is the what is within the spinal cavity of the vertebra, and you guys learn about the spinal cord, correct? Your spinal cord, same like your brain. It is protected by what? Meninges layer. The same concept which you guys have learned for the meninges will be what? Applied to where? To the spinal cord. So let's go to this picture, which is easy peasy to understand. Okay, this is the foramina created between the body and the arch of the vertebra, and we said this is a spinal foramina, and they name it spinal foramina because the spinal cord is running within it. Okay? What is the first meningeal layer? That it is against the skull bone, and also it is against what? The spine bone. Huh? Dura-periostal. Correct? Which space under your dura-periostal? The answer, epidural. And the epidural contain what? Fat. You see? That's the fat. So, what I draw the line is what? The periostal, dura, and then the space underneath of it with containing fat is the epidural. Correct? Now, which layer next? The dura proper. This is the dura mater proper. Which is space underneath of the dura proper? Which is space underneath of the dura? Subdural. So this will be your subdural space. What does the subdural space contain?
CSF.
No, that's arachnid.
Huh?
That's arachnid.
What does the subdural space contain? In your brain, the subdural space contain what? The venous sinus, meaning the blood drain from my brain, it goes to the where? To the subdural space, and then from the subdural space into what? What you guys learned, the sinuses. No? Not even Chelsea looks, oh my God. Okay, we'll figure it out. And then, underneath of the subdural space, what do I have? Which layer? Meninges? Arachnoid. There you go. That's my arachnoid layer. So, can you tell you have what? Layer, space, layer, space, layer. And then underneath of the arachnoid, what do I have? Space. Subarachnoid. What does contain?
CSF.
CSF, the cerebrospinal fluid. And we said the CSF circulates from where? From the brain all the way down, correct? Okay, now from the arachnoid layer, you have small tiny extension. Do you see those extensions? They call them denticulate ligament. To understand it, your imagination. I am the spinal cord, and you need to imagine that I'm within the hole, correct? And my hand, they extend that way. Those are what? The denticulate ligament. Meaning, if I jump, I don't go that way, neither what? That way. Those, they what? I'm holding myself. This is the same concept. Your spinal cord supposed not to what? To do this when we run, play football, fighting, correct? Supposed to remain within the hole without hitting any part, correct? Those are the ligaments that what? Hold your spinal cord. We call them what? Denticulate ligament. They're coming from where? Arachnoid layer. Question? No question. And the most inner layer further, which is enclosing the spinal cord, the way enclosing my brain is the pia. So this is the pia. Yeah? Do you guys have any question? We repeat them or you good? Periostal against the bone. Underneath of it, epidural space containing fat. Underneath of it, dura mater proper. Underneath of it, subdural space containing the venous fluid. Underneath of it, arachnoid has extension that connect with the spinal cord, known as denticulate. Underneath of it is, whatever you see in black is the cerebrospinal fluid, and then senorita pia mater. The extension of the dura all the way exiting from, what did I call it, this hole earlier today? The one in your, where is that? Hiatus, correct. The extension of the dura exit and attached to the what? To the coccygeal, the last one, we call it the filum terminalis. So this is what? This is filum terminalis.
Where does it begin?
Huh?
Where does it begin?
That's the extension of the meninges dura, the filum terminalis. Your spinal cord, it is not a cord all the way down. Your spinal is a cord until T12L1. Cord. There. That's a cord. Your spinal cord, we call it cord until T12L1. But further down, it is no longer cord like this. It is what? A wooden part, we call it con medullaris, and then the horse tail. So can you see over here ends as a cord, and then they didn't put cord for you over here. It's a matter of what? Wide area that we call it con medullaris, and then it's a horse tail fibers. We'll talk about it in a little bit. Fecal sac is the area where is between or that belong to the subdural space. We refer to it by the fecal sac. It's a wide area for the fecal sac. Your spinal cord, it's in continuation with what? With brain stem medulla. Do you guys remember the brain stem? In sequences. From the top, we have midbrain, pons, collector. Midbrain, pons, and then what? Medulla. After the medulla is the spinal cord. So, exactly your medulla end where? At the foramen magnum. And this is what? The starting of the spinal cord, all the way down. Correct? So this is what you guys are seeing. This is the foramen magnum. And this is the starting point of the spinal cord. And of course, you can see it over here. That's your brain stem. And this is the beginning of the spinal through the foramen magnum. So your spinal cord extends from foramen magnum until T12L1 is a cord-like structure. Further down, it is what? Wide area, we call it cone medullaris. Further down, the cone medullaris become what? Horse tail fiber. We call them quada equina. So those are the quada equina, the horse tail. This is the cone medullaris, and all the way further. So where does spinal cord end as a cord-like structure? The answer will be T12L1. Okay? Of course, your spinal cord, as we said, it is covered by the meninges and the spaces. So this is why the extension of the meninges that exit the hiatus, you see how it's exited from hiatus, this one. This is, we call it the filum terminalis. Your spinal cord is divided into region based on the name of the what? Of the vertebral region. The portion of my spinal cord located within my thoracic region, we call cervical region, we call it what? Cervical spinal cord, thoracic spinal cord, lumbar spinal cord, sacral spinal cord. So this is the division of the spinal cord. Question? No question. This is an image sagittal for the spinal cord, and I can tell this is lumbar and sacral because of the promontory, correct? That's the angle between L5, S1. So this is the sacral promontory. If I go down, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. If I go up, L5, 4, 2. Okay? We said the spinal cord ends as a cord structure at the level of L1. So let's count. This is L5, L4, L3, L2, L1. Okay. End. What's next? Cord above that level, you could tell, and then cone medullaris wide underneath of that level. Correct? And of course, you could see you cannot see the reflection from the horse tail, but you could see the reflection from the filum terminalis, that's the filum terminalis. So the meninges, when it covers, it comes down like this and exit through the hiatus to end in the last coccygeal vertebra. Question? No question. Do you guys remember the cistern? What is cistern? Cistern is? Cistern. What's the definition of word cistern? Louder.
I'm trying to remember the
No, you already said it.
Widened area.
Widened area of subarachnoid space containing cerebrospinal fluid. Correct? Now we said, or you guys have learned about all the cistern, the one where? In the brain. Do we have cistern in the spine? The answer, yes. And the largest cistern basically is lumbar cistern. Ladies, actually no, not that one. Lumbar cistern, it is used by the physician to drain cerebrospinal fluid if needed for any purpose. Like for example, people when they have meningitis, if I need to know the cause, what's the name of the bacteria that causing the meningitis, because there are different kinds of bacteria that cause meningitis. The most common one is what? The meningococcal, but it could be a different one. So We drain small amount of that fluid, but the doctor, he used what? The cistern. Why? Because it is wide. So the needle for sure is not gonna puncture any of my neuronal tissue and paralyze that patient. So this is the safest area to do so, and to drain the cerebrospinal fluid for any purpose required. In this axial cut, of course, you are going to see the spinal canal. Within the spinal canal, I have spinal cord. You are also be able to see the reflection of the meninges along with the spaces. Of course, you don't see the meninges layer itself, but you can tell about the spaces. So the meninges that it is against the bone is the periostal one, and then underneath is what? The epidural one, correct? And then you will have the other one, subarachnoid space and dura layer, and the subarachnoid space containing what? Cerebrospinal fluid. So this will be the pia, the most inner one, correct? And this is going to be the arachnoid, and between them is my subarachnoid space, and that's why you are seeing it a little bright because of the fluid, correct? So those are at the level of the cervical, the axial cut, which is what you're seeing over here is the same, except over here they are pointing on those. The denticulate ligament, correct? We said the denticulate ligament, the one they extend from the arachnoid layer, which is this one is the arachnoid layer. They extend and they attach to the pia and the spinal cord. Any question? What's the function of the spinal cord? Do you guys remember? By the way, if you wish to read anything related to function of the spinal cord, you could do so. And if you have any question, you can email me if you need any help. Or you can bring that question and we can talk about it next week in front of everybody, so everybody will benefit, unless you don't want to benefit. What's the function of your spinal cord? Exactly. So it's a matter of what? A connection between the brain, which is the central nervous system, and the peripheral nervous system. Meaning, nothing comes from my brain and reach my hand without what? Going through the spinal cord. Nothing coming from my hand and reach my brain without going through what? So basically the spinal cord is a matter of what? Connection between inside and the outside of our body. Also, your spinal cord has the fast reflexes, correct? Like when you put your hand on the stove, you have to move it right away, otherwise you are in trouble, correct? So those we call them the fast reflexes, okay? Those they're supposed not to, we don't want them to reach the brain cortex to be interpreted. It is hot or not. By the time it does so, your hand is burned. Anyway, the way how we identify in our brain, white matter and what? Gray matter. The gray matter of the brain is located what? In the cortex, outside. The white matter is located where? Inside. You're gonna flip them back way for what? For the spinal cord. The white matter is the outside, and the gray matter is what? The inside. We said earlier, your spinal cord is in continuation with the medulla of the brainstem. And if you guys remember, the medulla of the brainstem, it is not roundy-moundy like this. No, it has two cracks. One from the anterior, we call it anterior fissure, and one from where? From the posterior. We call it the posterior fissure. The continuation of your spinal cord all the way top to the L1 with the same configuration like what? Like the medulla, meaning has fissure anterior and one fissure what? Posterior. If you look at this picture, those are 1, 2, 3, 4. There are 4 axial cut, starting from the cervical, thoracic, lumbar, and sacral. All they show me what? The anterior fissure, and this is posterior, anterior, posterior, anterior, posterior, anterior, posterior. We said the configuration of the medulla of the brainstem. Follow the same one, correct? Okay. Divide the spinal cord. You don't need this, guys. Divide the spinal cord into 2 halves. The top is anterior, the bottom is what? Posterior. The anterior one is for your motor, the posterior is for your sense. Meaning, for the motor coming from my brain, reach where? The top half of my spinal cord and then exit for me to move my hand. The sense coming from my hand, when it goes inside the spinal cord, it goes to where? To the posterior aspect. So, motor, sense, that's the way it's divided. Now, of course, the white matter is divided into column, and the gray matter has an H letter shape. And of course, the top, the anterior, we call it anterior or ventral horn, dorsal horn, anterior horn, dorsal horn. Basically, those are what? Motor and the sense, respectively. In the middle, where is the H bar connect, there is a hole. Of course, you can see it in everywhere, guys. And this is the central spinal canal. We say the cerebrospinal fluid reach the 4th ventricle. After the 4th ventricle, the cerebrospinal fluid take 2 different pathways. One will go further down to where? To the spinal cord through the spinal canal. So the spinal canal, this is my spinal cord, guys, and that will be what? The spinal canal. What do we have inside of that spinal canal? Cerebrospinal fluid, okay? And the other pathway for the cerebrospinal fluid from your 4th ventricle will exit through the aperture, medial and lateral aperture, which is we name them foramen of Lussica and foramen of Magendie, to go around the subarachnoid space. I don't know if you remember this, but this is what we said, okay? Don't worry about it, okay. Have you noticed earlier we said the spinal canal at the level of the cervical region and lumbar region, it's a what? Little bit wide, and that reason you have the spinal cord also being what? Wide. At the level of the thoracic and the sacral, the spinal canal is narrow, so this is what explains why my spinal cord narrow also at that level too. Any question? Do you guys have any question? Yes, ma'am.
Why does the picture say posterior anterior? It's
Where?
like flopped.
They flip that?
No. Go back, go down. All right, stop. See how it says posterior anterior? No, to your left. Left. Your left. No. Yeah, the picture on the left. Right here. Patient's right. Patient's right.
Yeah. You're talking about
Yes.
those? No, they're wrong. Cross
Right?
those. Don't cross them. Yeah.
Yeah,
You need to
okay.
cross those, okay? What's the other word for ventral?
Anterior.
Anterior. And dorsal?
Posterior.
Posterior, yeah. So those I don't know where they come from, I swear. Anyway. A coronal image of the spinal cord, as we say, at the level of L1 T12, it is no longer a cord-like structure, guys. It is what? A Y like a cone. We call it cone medullaris. Do you see it? And then further down, it's a matter of what? Fiber tail, that they refer to it by quada equina. Quada equina. Okay? And for this picture, that's enough for you. Again, if the cut is at the level of or below L1, then they said quad equina. I mean the cone medullaris, but you cannot tell. But whatever. That's, I mean, you cannot see. It's too hard to tell about the cone medullaris in the axial, guys. Okay, but the concept is the same. And of course, this is the central spinal canal where it's supposed to be. You're not going to see this at all unless it is dilated for any reason such as an obstruction. But normally we're expecting it to be in the middle where the spinal fluid. Above it is the anterior. Below it is what?
Posterior.
The posterior. We said the anterior is motor function. The posterior is the sensory function, stimulus. Carry.
You said bottom was sensory?
The top,
No, the bottom was sensory?
sensory.
No,
This is the continuation of the medulla and bones, so that after that you are seeing this, the central spinal canal further from the fourth ventricle in coronal cup. So this is the reflection of the central spinal canal. Your imagination will go all the way down the length of your spinal cord, and it has the cerebrospinal fluid. Same, this is the level of your foramen magnum. That means this is the medulla, and the continuation of my medulla is what? Is my spinal cord, and little tiny small reflection from the central spinal canal. Also, whatever you are seeing in white over here is the subarachnoid space with the cerebrospinal fluid in. We don't need that one. Question? No question. Good. Next is spinal nerve. Let me take a picture, get a picture. The picture is the best, guys. I don't like this one. Neither this, neither this, none of the above. Where is it? That picture is. This is your spinal cord. From your spinal cord, from the anterior aspect, I'm gonna have an axon branch. We call it ventral root. And then from the posterior, another branch, we call it the dorsal root. The ventral and the dorsal root are going to emerge together, and they're gonna form what? A spinal nerve. So your spinal nerve is formed by what? By the emerging of the ventral and the dorsal root. Those are neuronal fibers from where? From my spinal cord. When they emerge together, they're gonna form what? My spinal nerve, which is, this is your spinal nerve. And your spinal nerve will exit through, spinal nerve exits from where? How do the spinal nerve exit?
Oh, through
Superior and
the
inferior.
Through the notch.
Yeah,
Transverse. Transverse vertebral notch. So, that's your transverse vertebral notch, basically. correct? And then what will happen? The transverse, at the level of the transverse vertebral notch, the spinal nerve will be what? Divided into ventral ramus, mean the anterior, and then dorsal ramus, which is mean posterior. Now, the dorsal ramus, let me do it with a different color, will give me this branch, which is, they didn't name it. This branch from the dorsal ramus is what we use for autonomic nervous system, meaning the involuntary part that happen in your body, carried by where or from where? From anywhere in my body through what? Through this branch to the dorsal, to the spinal, to my spinal cord, and then the signal will reach my brain further. Your imagination is whatever I mumbled over here will happen through the whole. Oh my God! I wonder if I am seeing butt in the bottom, like that will happen from where? From all the way top to what? To bottom, exactly. So from every portion of the spinal cord, I'm gonna have what? 2 branches. We call them root. One coming from anterior, we call it ventral. One coming from posterior, we call it dorsal. They are going to emerge to give me what? Spinal nerve. So whatever you see in yellow over here, basically those are what? The spinal nerve exiting from the transverse foramina. Okay? Except for the vertebra, there is no transverse foramina formed by the notch. It is what? Located within it. But you do have what? You do have nerve, spinal nerve. Now, adding one more thing, this is the occipital bone, correct? There is a spinal nerve between the first cervical and what? And the occipital. There is no foramen over here, but I do have what? Spinal nerve. You guys get it? Okay. So the same concept, you have it from where? All the way from top to bottom in here, all the way from top to bottom over here. Bottom line, how many spinal nerve do we have? They said 31 pair, right and left. So 31 plus 31, those are 64, right? Okay, 62. Just checking, someone is awake. We did this. Okay, so also they named those spinal nerve, the one they exit, by the name of what? Of the region. So, how many cervical vertebrae do I have?
7.
How many cervical spinal nerve do I have?
7.
No,
8.
8. Why 8? Because you need to count the one between the occipital bone and. So, 8 cervical spinal nerve, 12 thoracic spinal nerve, 5 lumbar spinal nerve, another 5 for the what? Okay, another 5 for that. Got it? Oh. Those, and 1 coccygeal, my bad, sorry, I forgot. Any question? No question? I didn't know that you're taking pictures.
No, recording. So you
Each
go
of
later.
those spinal nerve, we said when they exit, what they do. Do you see that? I don't know. This is little tiny baby one, correct? This and this. So they give 1 anterior branch and 1 what? Posterior. Correct? The spinal cord will exit from the foramen. 1 branch goes toward the anterior and the other one goes to it. Posterior. Now, the anterior, only the anterior ramus, they are going to what? to emerge between every single part of the spine. Only the anterior. And those are going to form what? What we refer to them by plexus. Let me see what is that. We'll get to it. So one more time. The anterior ramus of each spinal nerve, they will emerge to form what? Plexus. What about the posterior one? They don't. Each posterior one will go by itself to provide specific part of your body to what? To supply it. You guys understand it? I think there was a picture previously. Picture is good, guys, to learn. There. You see, in this, they are showing you only the anterior branches of the very C1, C5. They form what? The cervical plexus. And then another anterior branches, they form brachial plexus. And then another branches, they emerge, they form lumbar, and then sacral, and nothing else. Do you have a question? It's a free today.
I know.
What do you mean you know? Then
You
ask.
said that in the morning.
Oh, I did? Okay. Do you have a question? You lose. That's the spinal cord in axial cut. I said I have one root from anterior, the other one from the posterior. When they emerge, they're gonna form one.
Nerve.
They're gonna give me spinal nerve. The spinal nerve is gonna give me what? Two branches. One it goes anterior, and the other one goes what?
Posterior.
Posterior. You guys get the point? Oh. I'm gonna have another one, same concept like the bottom one. Anterior and also what? Posterior. The posterior ones, they go free by themselves to supply part of your body and mostly the sensation part. And this is why you're gonna see the mapping. This is what we call it, the map of the sensation of the body. We'll talk about it in a little bit. But the anterior branches, which is those two, those anterior branches from this spinal nerve and from this, they are going to what? They're gonna emerge. What are they going to form? Plexus. Did you guys get it? Good. Any question? No? Your spinal nerve, that exit, of course. Do you know that the spinal nerve, they have two functions. They carry the sense and what? The motor at the same time, correct? This is why. If I have sense, will go this way through my spinal nerve, but goes to where? To my spinal cord, the posterior root. The motor comes this way, from the anterior portion to the anterior root. Okay? But your spinal nerve, basically, they give what we call it dermatoma, or the distribution of the sense in our body. So, for example, let's take a person, he has intervertebral disc. When you have intervertebral disc, that's mean the problem in here, and then what's gonna happen to that nerve? It's gonna be what? Squeezed, pinch. Okay. Pick up any squeezed vertebra, any number. Give me the two vertebrae that the disc is squeezed. Pick up any.
T10.
Huh?
L1, L2.
L1, L2. L1, L2, lumbar 1 and lumbar 2. Where is that person who will feel the numbness because the nerve is pinched? Well, this is the map. There. There. Meaning, he goes to the doctor, he told the doctor, I'm always numb in here. Immediately, the doctor, he knows that there's a problem between L1, L2. What if he told her, I feel numb in my calf over here? Right away, it's L4, L5. Did you guys get the point? So this is the way. This is very important for you guys. Do you know that when you're gonna do MRI, if you know a little bit about the patient that you're gonna scan, do the images, that will help you on where you're supposed to concentrate, and so on. This is something you're gonna learn it in the upcoming semester with the procedures. But it is good to know about the patients, what's going on. At least I know where am I supposed to do more, and if I missed it, I go back and I do it again. It happened. No more. Now in this picture we did see previously, basically they are showing you what? The transverse foramina between the top and the bottom notch of each vertebra and the exiting of what? Of the spinal cord. By the way, what I forgot to mention that on the dorsal, over here, on the dorsal root, you have a ganglia. Ganglia is a station, a punch, a collection of neuronal cell body that we use it as station for the sense stimuli, for sensory stimuli. We're gonna see it in a little bit too. In this picture, they are showing you the end at the level of the quadra equina fiber toward the end of the lumbar, like we are below the L1. Once you are able to see the quadra equina, that means you are below L2, L3, and so far further. And then they are showing you the dorsal ganglia, which is that I just crossed, which is we say we use it for the sense as station. Another picture, which is this is a coronal, so this is the spinal cord, and you guys are looking at what? At the root. Why do I call this dorsal root? Just because they told me. What's your clue for you to say this is the dorsal root? What dorsal root has? The dorsal root has something that the ventral one doesn't, which is the ganglia. Do you see ganglia? There, that's the ganglia. So this way I know that this is what? The dorsal root. Make sense? Sometimes. This is quadra equina. That's the cone medullare, which is easy, you can tell. No need for all the nerves. Yeah, this is the also the CT scan. This is they showing you the root of the spine that exit from the sacral, which is a little bit larger, by the way. The root. They just showing you the cervical spinal cord, and everything else in this picture you guys have learned, so nothing to worry about. And then we are talking about the plexus. Only the anterior ramus of the spinal nerve, only the anterior, when they emerge, they're gonna form one. Plexus, correct? And the plexus in your body is, there's one on the top, cervical. There's one more above, cervical. And then, so this is the cervical. over here exactly is brachial. Spare the thoracic and go lumbar, and then further down is what? Sacral. So one more time. Cervical plexus, brachial plexus. There is no thoracic plexus, lumbar, sacral. Okay? Why there is no thoracic plexus? Because the nerve from the thoracic spine goes each one by itself. One goes toward the anterior and the other one goes toward one. And you can find them between the ribs, and we call them intercostal nerve. So one more time, the plexus are formed by the emergence of the anterior ramus of the spinal nerve, except for what? Thoracic portion, correct? The cervical plexus is formed from C1 and C4. So C1, 2, 3, and 4. Those, the anterior ramus are going to emerge together to give me what? Cervical plexus. From the plexus, I am going to have nerves that goes and supply specific part of your body. The largest nerve of your cervical is phrenic nerve. Word the phrenic pertain to, I told you this before, I guess, right? On the first meeting. When I said word the phrenic, I'm talking about which structure of your body. Phrenic pertain to. You're too far. Let me see. Yeah, you're too far. Your diaphragm muscles, they call it the phrenic. Meaning, the nerve that supply my diaphragm muscles come from where? From the cervical spine and goes down through those two holes of your thoracic cavity, like this, and goes that way until reaching where? Your diaphragm muscles. Do you guys heard about radiating pain? Do you guys know what's radiating pain? Go ahead, tell me what's radiating pain before you're falling asleep, yeah?
I'm not falling asleep. If you have a pain at one point and then it like.
Exactly, perfect. What was your name? I forgot it.
Sasha.
Sasha. Mrs. Sasha, you are perfect. This is what it's explained. A person or lady, because it's more common in lady, she has problem in her gallbladder, like stone and get inflamed. When she goes to the doctor, she will tell him what? I have a pain over here every time I go and I eat French fries from McDonald's, because fat stimulates the pain. And I feel that pain on my shoulder. How come? Well, when you have an inflamed gallbladder, the phrenic nerve is what? Closed, and it's also what? Irritated. They're gonna carry the sense of pain to where? Up. So this is why you feel the shoulder and the neck area pain. Same concept what happened to the people when they have heart attack. Some people with the heart attack, they don't even feel the pain in their chest. They're telling you, my neck and my arm. That what we call it radiating pain, correct? So the radiating pain, basically, it is based on the distribution of what? Of
Nerves.
the nerves. And phrenic nerve is the one that carry the sensation when you have a problem in your abdominal cavity. The next plexus is brachial plexus. The brachial plexus, it is formed by the anterior ramus of numeral 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and a little bit from the thoracic, number 1, just a little portion, okay? The brachial plexus is responsible for supplying your whole entire upper extremity. Do you guys remember any nerve in this upper extremity? Any?